next 3 to 5 years. There are certain things that machines do very well, and there are certain things that machines don't do very well. Machines, again, are very good at analyzing data at massive scale, finding patterns and correlations between different data points to yield an output. And sometimes that output is predictive in nature. But what machines are not good at is developing strategy, understanding how to take those business insights that we're getting from the machine and apply them to everyday life. So we use the word business, we use the word artificial intelligence. It's a little bit of a hyperbole because, again, the intelligence that we assign to a computer is really not the same as human intelligence. And the way computers learn, while some similarities, is much different than we who learn and grasp information.
Well, I think I've learned in the past weeks or so, because I just got my first AI for Dummies book, and I highly recommend that, and I seriously mean that, because to help you understand that. There's a term that I've heard you use, human in the loop. And what that basically means is you can't just, it's not just push a button, take the paper out of the computer, and this is the way it's supposed to be. Humans still are involved in this process, and when we get to Mark and Kyle, they'll explain that too. So all this stuff that, hey, write me a report on Christopher Columbus talking about the Santa Maria, and something gets out of the computer. You still need to read it, correct it, check it out, but it'll give you the outline. And I wanted to stress that, all of us, that it's not, AI is not here to replace jobs or to do anything like that. It's to aid us in helping to make those strategic decisions that John is bringing up.
100% worth it. As a matter of fact, there are many new elements of artificial intelligence that are new. But the foundations of artificial intelligence have been around for 70 years. Matter of fact, the first machine learning algorithm that was ever developed was back in the 50s, and that was to play a game of chess. And certainly, I date myself a little bit, right? But as artificial intelligence, machine learning, other robotics, as other branches of artificial intelligence started to emerge and evolve, we can go back to 1980, right? I think the movie was War Games with Matthew Broderick, right? And we've all seen that. The whole premise of War Games, a movie that was made nearly 50 years ago, was based on artificial intelligence and machine learning. You can remember at the end of the movie where they're training the machine on playing tic-tac-toe. Really, that's about recognizing the patterns of tic-tac-toe, and that ultimately it's a game that nobody can win. So again, technology's been around for a long time in some fashion.
So we're talking Bobby Fischer playing against the computer. It was AI.
Correct. Right. And those are machine learning algorithms that were designed to be able to teach the machine to dynamically play in that case chess.
So it's been there for a while. That's why I say it's not coming. It's here, and it's been here. And what we're trying to do up here also is just to try to convince you to keep your mind open. It's easy to be afraid of something like AI because you don't understand it, and believe me, these gentlemen next to me understand a lot more than I do. But I finally said, I want to learn a little bit about it. So it's easy to run from it and say, yeah, okay, I know a little bit about it, but try to get a little bit deeper into it, and don't be afraid of it when it comes to racing. So when you hear AI in racing, try to listen and embrace it as opposed to saying, we'll let them take care of it. So we're just here to try to open up your mind a little bit that it's coming, and it could be a good thing. So carry on. And also want to say, if you have some questions, when you see a pause up here, raise your hand up, and we want to talk. We want to, be making conversational. So if you have something, raise your hand up, and we'll answer the question now rather than at the end.
That's a great question, and we've almost had a perfect storm from a technology standpoint. So when we start thinking about AI as we use it today, especially chat GPTs, a lot of that technology was started being developed out of the universities back around 2016, 2015. Again, a branch of generative AI. But a lot of other things have happened than just creation of new algorithms, because that's really what artificial intelligence is, right? It's a model, it's an algorithm that you run data through that produces a particular output. Again, it's really complex to do. I'm not a coding person, but certainly not complex to understand. But to answer your question, computing power, absolutely. So technology has changed across the board, not just artificial intelligence. The ability to process millions and millions and billions and even trillions of bits of information at one time is relatively new. We see the processing power of compute has dramatically expanded, but also the cost of compute in those chips have come way down, which is sort of democratized artificial intelligence. You no longer have to be Johnson and Johnson, $100 billion company, with $100 million contract with IBM to run blockchain or some supercomputer system. The democratization, the lower the cost of compute and some of these services is really what's giving us the ability today to talk about how can we apply some of this technology in our business, right? And how can we get a return on investment? How can we modernize? How can we optimize? Hopefully that answered your question.
Mark, you want to carry on?
Yeah, I just want to add, as AI is around all of us, and maybe our kids are using it in different ways. I think it's important to remember that it's getting better every 3 months, every 6 months. And so something that didn't work 6 months ago actually shouldn't assume that it won't work. And you may have heard or even tried, you can load in the racing form or a few keys, and AI can tell you who the fastest horse is. It's pretty obvious. It's just going to read the speed figures or see who the favorite is, and that's the stuff we all know. And it knows horse racing because there's a lot written on horse racing. Does it know how to train horses? Probably not. Might it in 3 years, if there's more written about it? Maybe it might have suggestions, or it might be right half the time, who knows, but it's getting better all the time in all these things. And so we'll talk more about it later, but it knows horse racing very well.
If I wanted to go one step down a little bit, you mentioned ChatGPT, you're talking ChatGPT. And that's the little thing that you have on your computer or on your phone, and you ask it to do something. What, on the basic level, how is that created? And that it has to do with the pattern situation. And what I was going to, you can use that to tie into what you're doing, Mark, in your work.
I mean, just the basic level, the way I understand it is these AIs basically read the entire internet. So, and now going through videos and podcasts and other things. So it knows a ton of information. And it's really, the way I use it, it's about context. So you could ask it, let's say if you had 10 horses in your barn, you could give it the PPs, and you could ask it what the recommendations are. It'd probably be somewhat silly, and there'd be a couple of good winners. But if you actually wrote a paragraph or two about every horse, their history of how they got to this point and their ailments and their strengths and weaknesses, it actually would work with you and it would actually be helpful. I'm not saying anyone needs that kind of help, but I'm saying as just an example from a trainer barn level. And so that's something that I've done from a company level. You can ask it something. It's just like if you imagine if you hired not an intern, but maybe an entry-level person, they come in on the first day. You could ask them stuff, but you really wouldn't do that. You would actually train them for a day or a week, load them up with information about your company, all the things that you can do in your business, and then you could ask them, hey, go do this research for 20 minutes or an hour or 2 hours. And you would get some good answers. You still want to, fact check it, but that's kind of how I was laid out from how we can all use it every day.
And so what exactly are you and your horse racing nation doing in horse racing currently, and what do you have plans for the future?
Yeah, sure, and I've got some slides I can go through those. Yeah, let's go to them up. So, I thought, first I could show you some of the things that we're doing in Horse Racing Nation with AI. And then we could kind of maybe bring the conversation back to a little bit of the horsemen's groups and the trainers and some of the state organizations and where things might fit in a little bit and some of the opportunities. But so, some of things we've got data you may have seen on the simulcast signal at this is Gulfstream and several other tracks. Just trying to use data to kind of tell the story, educate players about the races, learning a little bit more on the track plays. And then this is what Rick was alluding to. So we started doing the morning line. We built an AI, it's really a machine learning model, modeling hundreds of thousands of races and modeling the morning line. And this is there's a lot of detail there, but basically the blue line is the error in the morning line at every track in the country this year. And so the further on to the left, the more accurate the line. And then the green triangles and the red dots are our lines. So the green is our line, and then the red circles are our projected line after scratches. And so essentially we're just trying to get this to be accurate more and more. And this is really what the computer teams are doing, is they're using data modeling to model odds. You know, how does that matter to us in the business? Well, you know, I don't know that we all really spent a lot of time paying attention to the morning line the last 10, 20 years. But now with computer wagering, you know, the handles, the pool's moving all the time, the odds are moving. So if you have a good morning line and you say this horse is going to go off at 7-2, that sort of prevents it from being 12-1 and getting some of these crazy odds. So it kind of anchors it better.
So Mark, how right now today, how many tracks are you doing the morning line for?
We're doing 4, so we're doing Santa Anita, Laurel, Colonial, and Louisiana Downs, and we're going to pick up a couple more this year. And then we're also going to do a projected line with a couple tracks. And so even if we're not doing the morning line of the track, we're going to project what the odds finish at. And again, it's just trying to give bettors an understanding of the value of the horse, where it's going to go off. And so sometimes, I mean, maybe the morning line is difficult, and that's why we're using a computer process to do it. But if a horse is 20-1, a horse player might get all excited and then it ends up going off at 5 and they get frustrated. But our model might pick that up a day in advance and say, well, this one's really going to go off at 6 or 7.
So you mentioned that's the first part about the morning line. I mean, we all are familiar with the morning line, and we always like to open up the program and say, oh, that we should be 2-1 and not, you know, 8-1 and dash it. And let me tell you, it's not an easy job. And if somebody asks you if you want to do it, do not raise your hand, because you write 99 days and you'll get killed on that 100th day. But Mark mentioned what's in the future, what they're trying to perfect a little bit more is the predictive odds. In today's world, anyone that's made a $10 bet in the past year or so, you know, and unfortunately, sometimes you go bet and the horse is 8-1 and you get 860 back. And it's like, oh, geez, what happened? So what they're trying to develop now is when you look at the total board, it says 8-1, but it might, you know, they might next to it might say 9-2, or if it says 10-1, it might say 15-1. And the further they can perfect that, obviously, is going to be a help to people that bet for a living or bet for pleasure, contest players, you know, to help know what you're going to get at the end of when the race is over, after the bets are all in.
So just 2 quick things on that. If you think about prediction on the morning line, and it gets back to recognizing patterns of data, and we focus on that. We can start looking for areas that we can apply artificial intelligence. But ultimately, right, it's a perfect example when we look at the amount of data points that are out there to come up with the morning line. Right, understanding where that morning line has moved for a particular horse. We do some applications, for example, for some horsemen's groups. We use Equibase. I'm very excited to hear Kyle speak on Equibase, for example. Well, There are over 250 data points per horse in every race. So if you have, and again, and listen, we all strive for 10-horse field, but just keep that simple, right? If you have a race with 10 horses, that means in that one race alone, there are over 2,500 different data points. If you have 10 races on a card, that's over 25,000 data points for one card. Something like making morning line odds has moved beyond the capacity of the human brain to correlate all of that data and predict and come up with an accurate answer. That is a job that's perfectly applicable to the machine and better suited for compute than personality. Let me leave everybody with one last thing. In the business world, it's a very common question that people ask me. Okay, I understand the concept of artificial intelligence. It's about data. It's about understanding patterns of data and looking at different points of correlation between, again, sometimes thousands of different points of data. But how do I apply it in business? What the hell can I do with it? Right? What the hell can I do with it? So from a business perspective, we generally, right, at a macro level, look at 4 categories that businesses today are applying artificial intelligence to. The first being prediction, and that's somewhat what we're talking about morning line odds, where a machine is looking at those patterns of data, analyzing them, right, understanding them, and then starting to make predictions, right? We also refer to that as analytics. Start making prediction on what's to come next, such as the morning line odds. We see artificial intelligence applied in business and process optimization. So think of a factory and a piece of equipment on a factory floor. We start running artificial intelligence to maximize the productivity of that machine, to reduce the breakdowns or maintenance issues on that machine. So optimization across all business functions is a place that we're applying artificial intelligence. The third bucket is automation. And that's where we are taking those routine, mundane tasks filled out generally by people, right? Having a person, paying a person sit in front of a computer and fill out a spreadsheet 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, right, 52 weeks out of the year is really not a good application of what humans are capable of doing. So again, taking that back office process and automating. The other advantage to that is that it also brings transparency. An example, anybody here ever hear anybody complain on the draw that so-and-so always gets the optimal post, always gets the outside post on the sprint, always gets the rail on a route race, right? There's got to be cheating going on. Well, when you start to turn those types of functions over to a machine, right, you eliminate a lot of problems, a lot of problems, because then there becomes a digital transparency. The fourth area that we're seeing artificial intelligence applied to is creativity. And that's where we're seeing outreach and marketing and companies using creativity. Amazon's the best example. You go out and you buy something, the next thing you know, there's about 8 billion related ads hitting your computer screen. Why is that? They're using AI to kind of understand what your buying patterns are, what your buying behaviors are. And then they're doing a couple of things, right? They're actually automating the process and so forth. So go on.
You mentioned, no, I'm sorry, you mentioned that process, and we started out by saying how many points of data there are involved in horse racing. Mark was just at an AI convention in Las Vegas, and why don't you tell him how far that we may be behind this compared to other sports?
Yeah, the thing, so Amazon Web Service, we've mentioned like on the NFL broadcast, the next gen stats. So I went to a conference in Vegas, and every major sports league, NFL, NBA, Formula One, PGA, they all did presentations. They were almost all the same. They're spending tens of millions of dollars with AWS to come up with all these data points and new stats, and just telling stories about sports, telling stories about why this driver won the race, or why this team won the game, why the momentum shifted and the odds shifted, or how rare of a play it is when Caleb Williams finds somebody in the corner in the end zone. And so those are all things that are essentially trying to make the game more interesting. And that's something that we're working on from the marketing standpoint is, how do we go over more stats to make horse racing easier and better to understand? Stats like ROI, they're not really good stats. There's ways to improve on
I
that.
think before you get to ROI, you really gotta start getting people who are novice fans to really understand the sport, right? I often tell people that you can't, most people who watch the Kentucky Derby on the first weekend in May are, couldn't tell apart if it was the get out race here in the afternoon, right? I mean, it's just the fact of the matter. And so you look at other sports and the production quality and the level of data that's shared and the insights that are derived. And that's really, I think, what we have to do in sport. We think about some of the things that Eric was talking about earlier, about how do you make this a much more popular sport? Then the gambling will come, and then the handle will grow, and the whole crop will grow, and I think really fundamentally the storytelling is really where that start.
And 100% right. If we watch football games, baseball games, and somewhere during the game, it'll say, Detroit Lions, 58% chance to win. And then, Minnesota win back a touchdown, and then now they're 62% chance to win. Imagine horses going down the backside, and it says 4-1, and it says, horse in front, taking into consideration the time, how fast they ran, the first quarter, half mile. It said this horse has a 37% chance to win from here, and your horse back there has a 6% chance. And all of a sudden they go real fast in the next quarter, and the odds change again. It's something for them to grasp onto. If for some reason it's like, the guy made that catch, and it was only a 12% chance that they could make that throw. We need to throw these numbers out in front of people. We need to use this information that we have at our fingertips and display it and get the fans involved.
Got a couple of examples I can show here. One of the things that we were able to do with AI is, so this is, I think it was from Sunday, projecting at each major track, which jockey, how many wins per jockey and per trainer, and then ranking those. And it just could be a fun stat, maybe, I'm not sure where that leads, but if you walk into a track, maybe knowing these are the top 3 jockeys predicted of the day. And it's just simply predicting using our off-line odds. And so that's where AI helps, is once you have the data, we use the data and we model it to create the odds, then you have the odds and you can create fun things like this. We also do real-time speed figures. I think we're the only ones that do speed figures within about 90 minutes of the race. Right now, we usually write them on the story on the website the next day, but we're wanting to speed that up. And, just something, again, that hits the fan, but also hits owners, trainers. You want to know, how your horse ran and what was the speed figure. And then we also built an AI intelligent chatbot where then you can use these lines and you can take a novice fan and say, okay, well, here's the good bets in this race, here's the bad bets. You can answer any questions or something like that. And then just kind of other applications. We've built a pace map, and this is kind of common in Time4 US and some other providers do pace maps. But on the right, we did something that I think is sort of novel. It's a win zone by horse, and what this is actually the two horse. I think it's tomorrow in race 6 here. And the first circle is kind of the 50% likelihood of where that horse is going to be in the pace. Because if you look at the 2 on the left on the pace map, it's on the inside. And if it maintains that position on the inside, but it can do it maybe a little bit slower and moves into that red zone, which is the win zone. And so we're actually using AI to take the data and create something like this, where we can create, this could be for a jockey or an agent, where you want to ride the horse in the race. This could be for the barn, the trainer, the owner, to try to get advantage and see. You can do all kinds of fun things once you have the data. And then this is a little hard to read, but so we actually were able to download the condition books from around the country. And so these are two races in the Oklahoma condition book coming up. Well, one was March 1st, one's tomorrow. That the race tomorrow, we predict, I think it's 45% of the race goes. I mean, the race has already been thrown. But imagine like for a trainer or an owner, if you can look at the condition book and know, is this race going to go? Right? Like that's the most basic thing. You want to enter a horse, you want the horse to run, the owner's paying for the horse to be ready, or you're deciding between a couple races. And God forbid you pass up one race to go for the second race that doesn't go. But this is all about using data, and once we have the data, AI can kind of connect this in a way that's useful to all of us in different disciplines.
That's beautiful, and I'll get into a little bit more of that racing office type stuff with AI and the predicting of races. Kyle, we mentioned the magic word data, and that's where Equiface comes in.
Yeah, when John mentioned massive amounts of data, that's us, and I think you mentioned the 250 data points, it's actually now with the GPS data, I think it's way beyond that.
Right.
It's thousands and thousands of points per horse per race, and that's data that we're actually using right now to send to the bookmakers in the UK, where they actually set real-time in-run models. So people actually able to bet on the race during the race going on, right? And so, and the data is good enough where the odds makers are comfortable using that to set the odds. And so, yes, you could throw up those slides. I'll just go through a few things just to kind of talk a little bit about both how we collect data at Equibase and then how we work to make sure we get that data out and to the right people to build products. And Mark's obviously a good example of that. So we worked together for a long time, and I appreciate all of the innovation that he and his team have been driving. So it's great to see. Steal this from you. All right, so I will look at this quickly, but I think the first thing I wanted to know is that every time you look at the form, there's a lot of data on here, right? And this is just looking at this is actually the Derby from 2 years ago, but just the Derby itself had data from 17 different tracks. No food here in the U.S., but obviously for bigger races like the Derby and Breeders' Cup, we'll go back and chart, Japanese runners, South American runners, whatever the case may be. But then you look at the entire card, 67 total tracks are represented. And so a little more color that this is, if you look back at 2025, these are 40,000 races, 53,000 starters, almost 300,000 starts. And this comes from, a couple hundred different venues. And we've got 78 chart callers, combination of full-time and part-time working around the country at the tracks gathering all this data. So it is not an insignificant effort. And I think, one of the great things, and this is Curtis Priest, who's standing up with the binoculars there, and Ken Davis, who are Southern California guys. And, Ken is a good example of somebody who with DRF before Equibase existed, after Equibase was created, came over and been with us for, a long time. He tells a great story about him trying to get to Hollywood Park during the Rodney King riots. These guys do a fantastic job, and we have teams like this all across the country as well as located centrally in Lexington. And one of the things that we put a real emphasis on over the past year or so is we had the team go through and look at our chart calling glossary. And so all the things that you see in the short comments and footnotes, we want to make sure that whether you're looking at a race from Naira, whether you're looking at a race from the West Coast, whether you're looking at a race at Paradise, we're using the same terminology and we're using it consistently. And so, as you start to feed this data into AI models, that stuff really counts. That's important. And so, a lot of what we're working on is both making sure that the data that we're gathering today is more accurate. And also, we're trying to figure out how we add more data points, and then just make sure that we're really consistent in how we're attacking that. I mentioned that we have some of our chart callers are located centrally in Lexington. If you look at a lot of other sports, they go to New York for replay, right? And it was funny. I was talking to a friend of mine who's in charge of data collection operations for Major League Baseball, and I said, "Hey, if you were starting over today, clean sheet of paper, how would you do differently?" And his response was, "I would collect more data remotely." And I was down a couple of years ago, and longer than that, but before the started with pitch clock in baseball. And there was a college baseball tournament they held in Houston at Minute Maid Park there. And basically all the people from around the country came in to get trained on how to do it. They started like, you're resetting the pitch clock, and everybody's still doing a button, and it's, an audible, and, at the first it was like beep, 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 get in, so it's all over the place. And then people started getting better at it, but at the same time, it's a human element, right? And I think, everything we can do to make sure that that data is accurate is really important. And we found that having people located centrally who can work together, train each other, and there's more flexibility has been really valuable. GPS, I know that there's been a lot of unhappiness and controversy about GPS, and I think it was a lot that we observed early on. I think it's really come a long way. We've actually just deployed the latest version of GPS, which doesn't just rely on satellites, but it also uses a ground-based base station to check for corrections. And so we're looking at that 10 times a second, and if we get one where it says, "Hey, I'm not sure this is right," we can throw that data point out. And so as a result, this new technology has really been beneficial in helping improve that data. And I'm excited to say that we now have 13 different tracks and really drilled on with those next generation kits. And so that's something we're really happy to see how it's progressed. And so this is an illustration of today of how we capture those data points. And so you can get every port down to every half along. But that's actually just the tip of the iceberg as well. And so we're working on some better ways to consume this data and get it out in front of people. Better storytelling, we covered that. I think another key thing I wanted to touch on is just thinking about what are the tools that we can then develop. You look at the picture on the top, you look at the NFL, the MLB, you see with people in the dugout on the sideline with iPads looking at what just happened and trying to understand, and then a ranking is really a little bit different picture in the winner circle. So I would love to see when we get to the point where we're actually having really intelligent, data-driven conversations before a race about their strategy, and then after a race, the debrief of, hey, what happened, and how can we do better next time? So those are all some of the driving factors. Another part of that is biometric data collection. So we're working with a company in Lexington State Analytics on a nerve-mounted sensor that is basically it was a part of the AAEP's study over the past year to really start to see if we can gather biometric data and derive insights around potential injury. And I'm happy to report that after doing about 162-year-olds last year for the full year, we got some real clear indications that there are, you can use this data to actually predict injuries, back it up with, knowing we need, do a bone scan that can really understand, like, hey, I can play this course off for 2 weeks and then be back in business, or we can wait for something to happen and then, you're out for 6 months or a year longer. And so those are all things that we're working on. The other thing I'll note is we're working with a ton of different partners on AI projects. And I think that's something we're looking to expand. I'll note here that we're looking to launch an equity-based innovation program, which will allow us to get more data in more hands and hopefully in a more efficient way. And so we're excited about that. We're going to work on that coming soon. And then I also wanted to note, if you look at these the screenshots, this is from the equity-based modernization project. We're going to update a lot of the components of the website, as well as updating APIs for all the data that we deliver, so that we can deliver that data to partners better. And I think one of the key things is that, not only you have to probably look at the condition book PDFs, extract all the data out of that. We're actually doing some work now to create all that to be able to be delivered via API, and on Equifax, be able to deliver a searchable condition book, but then also for other partners or other people who are in space, deliver that data in a much more efficient manner. And so for us, it's really all about how do we make the access to data easier so we can do more things with it and hopefully help us all make the sport the best we can possibly do.
Some pretty wild stuff. Let's get down to nuts and bolts. How is this going to help? How is this going to help you individually in your, as an owner, as a trainer? How is this going to help you? So after many years in the racing office, I talk to many owners and trainers before the day begins and while during the day and after the day. And I think that a consensus is the most aggravating thing for all involved is we get a condition book. We pick a race out 3 weeks down the road, you enter the horse, your race doesn't go. I think that is the number one complaint when the phone rings after the races are gone. Is, what are you gonna do with my race? Are you gonna bring it back? What should I do with my horse? So, it's a tough question, and improving the condition book is something that this could help with. So, Matt, we talk about patterns. John brought up the AI built on patterns. So, imagine AI running through all the races at your meet or prior meets or similar races in the area and taking into consideration all factors. And as you're writing your condition book, this is talking about a $25,000 claim, let's say, that you've been writing every 18 days. And it now suggests that I think 23 days is the number between races for that. Something along those lines. And maybe you were going to have thought about writing the race on a mile, and maybe suggest, I think at this point you might have a mile before, maybe it should be a mile of 16. So the more data we get, this could help along the way in improving condition books, races maybe moved a day or two or a week, whatever it would take to do that. That improves the race is going in a manner in which you can train up to. And to me, that's one of the most important issues here. That's what kind of piqued me. I was like, let me get this straight. Obviously, you still need a human element. You kind of hit a button and have a book spit out. But if you can have these small aids along the way to help you determine where a race might be placed. So let's go a little bit further and talk about racing a little bit, racing offices. I think, and I don't know if there's a correlation, but there is somewhere down the line. It's a full crop is shrunk. Racing offices are shrunk, and I mean that personnel-wise. The jobs aren't as I don't know, prestigious as maybe they were before. I don't know if that's the correct word, but with the shorter meets, racing less days would make it harder to get people to come up through the ranks in the racing office. I mean, it's factual. There's a couple of racing secretary jobs open right now at tracks around the country, which never used to be. You always had somebody like stepping up. So I envision racing offices to become maybe central as something you're talking about that they do in hockey for the replays, and maybe one day we'll be doing several things for replays of stewards taking horses down. But I can envision a racing office that is staffed with people that are paid a real living wage and able to take care of entries that may be coming in from 2 or 3 or 4 different tracks at the same time. I envision a time in the near future where time you're going to go to the barn in the morning, hit your button and your horses will come up. It'll be 3 green lights next to the horses that have races, either in the book or in the nearest the track near you. Horses that'll come up, hey, these 2 horses could be nominated to these 3 stakes. And at some point you literally just hit a button. And when you hit that button, it's going to say, okay, you're now entering the second race at Oaklawn. You make the 7th horse, and that race has a 68% chance of going at this point. So all this information you're going to be able to work with. And then if you enter the 3rd race and it says there's a 22% chance of going, you might say, and there's a race at the fairgrounds next week that this horse can go into. So, I mean, I'm speaking as a racing could go in like that out there. But that's how this could help you in a way. Now, there might be another race in the next day at the same track at a shorter distance, but you get my drift. Where all this information is going to be thrown at you, daily. It might remind you that you have, a horse that's going to be off the deaths list in 2 days. That now you can coach him, that's a reminder. Now I can work him. All kinds of information like that that's going to be transmitted, going to the central office that takes all this stuff in and handles entries and nominations from tracks regionally. So with AI involved, all this predictive stuff helps get this stuff done efficiently. And that's the stuff that I'm interested in. How's it gonna help racing get better? How's it gonna help a trainer? How's it gonna help an owner get their horses into races that they plan to run? And, you know, the stats and all that, that's great for the fans to follow and predict this stuff for the data. But when it comes down to it, if the horses aren't running at the best time that they should be running, that's not good. So that's where I kind of peaked up at the AI help. And, you know, a lot of us are stubborn, a lot of us, especially the ex-racing secretary, don't tell me how to do my job type of thing. This opens up, you know, an area where, yeah, you're still gonna have your plan, but, you know, just a few alterations in a condition book. And if you're working in concert with tracks around you, even better to not have races run upon each other. And that's what's gonna make it better. And so, you know, if we can take, you know, that's how it's gonna help you. The other stuff, these guys are, you know, deep into the weeds. It's gonna help, you know, everybody in a little fashion. But this is, to me, this is a horseman's group, and I want to let you guys know that's how it's going to help you and improve the fashion and improve the game and make life hopefully easier for you and make life easier for those racing secretaries that have to get that call. I'm getting you know, and you really don't have an answer for them. So, you know, AI's there. I mean, you can't read a thing on the internet. It's either a stock that you gotta buy because it's AI or just those two words come at you, and you have to learn to like go at them instead of back off from them. And you know, thank God we have guys like John and Mark and Kyle that are doing the heavy work. And at the end of the day, the stuff that they're doing is going to help the game as a whole. So.
I just wanted to also, yeah, I mean, that's a perfect way to put it. I mean, there's all this data that can help all of us and well beyond will race go, you know, we predict the field size for the race. I mean, we kind of know it traditionally, but maybe it's a new need. We predict the winning speed figure. Eventually, we predict if I enter this horse, what odds would it be? What, you know, where would it fit in the field? So there's a lot of data we have today. There's a lot of stuff we can add tomorrow. I just wanted to real quick, I wanted to recognize, well, Eric, thanks and appreciate the opportunity and the HBPA. Also, on our team, our director of machine learning, Keith Bush, is in the back. And he and I are gonna be around for a couple days if we can answer any questions or help. We do a lot of data for horsemen's groups, Churchill, the KTA, the Kentucky HBPA, NIFA is not here, but we do work for them. Any data that you want, any reports that you want on a daily basis, a weekly basis, ad hoc basis, we're here to help horsemen's groups, and there's a lot of stuff that we can do. Sometimes there's new ideas and new proposals and things like that. So the data can really just tell a story of what makes sense and where you want to go.
So the one thing I didn't want to add, what I can want to do is great conversation. I don't want to be anybody Cheerios, right? But there's a little bit of reality too that we just all have to accept. We are woefully behind as an industry from a technology standpoint. And it's great that we're sitting here talking about artificial intelligence, but technology in general, even before we got to this point, has lapped us multiple times over, right? Again, you get back to a phone, I can pick up this device, and whether it be by text, whether by email or by calling, I can make a reservation at virtually any restaurant in Palm Springs, even though I'm in Philadelphia. Find out how many people are attending that, actually pick my seat, change my reservation, get updates on that. Yeah, in many jurisdictions, unless you're standing in front of the entry part, it's very difficult to get an entry in. So there are technologies that have been around for a long time. We need to embrace them. The other thing that I would say is that, you know, and again, talking to many chief information officers from very large companies, there's also a habitual tendency when something new comes out, like a shiny object, we're all talking about artificial intelligence, running around saying, okay, where can I apply AI? Where can I apply AI? And that's really, it's really right, not an approach that I would recommend. But what I would suggest is that artificial intelligence is a very promising and powerful tool. The insights and the things that we can do from understanding data around us, regardless of where we get that data, from the internet, from sensors, whatever the case, right, allows us to make more intelligent decisions. But there's a lot of things that we can do, right, without using AI to modernize. And most importantly, the best place to start is to start with a business problem. Start with a business problem wherever it is. What would I like to change? What would I need to modernize? And then back into that. Is artificial intelligence the right solution to get you the desired view? So
I think that's right, John. I think one thing I would add too is just that actually really timely. I was having a conversation with one of our partners who's helping with some modernization. They made the comment, you know, if we were doing this 3 years ago, we'd be looking at it a lot differently, right? And so the fact that we have a number of systems that need to be updated across the board, now is a fantastic time to be doing that work and actually leapfrogging ahead of some others. And so I think we have to look at it as an opportunity.
sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful panel. Thank you guys very much. Everybody involved. We're done with any kind of review questions. Thank you. I have a quick question. We talked about AI and how it changes every day exponentially, and anyone can do it. And everyone, a lot of people do it. Some people just choose not to take advantage of it. So now let's go to the other side of the coin, which are CAWs, computer assisted wagering. And they are getting a lot of heat saying they're manipulating markets, they're manipulating pools, they're the bad guys of the industry. But I asked this question really to the panel. Aren't they really just taking advantage of AI more so than the casual player, whereas the casual player can also do the same thing? And in fact, they are not manipulating pools, or do you feel they are manipulating pools and deserve the black hat that they are currently receiving? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, may I say something to address that first? We've had a panel on this, and I know CAWs goes back and forth quite a bit. I've always said pretty openly that I think the technology is the problem, not necessarily the back end. Dave Basler and I have had a lot of conversations about the CAWs in particular with his expertise on the back end. And ultimately, as Mr. Sella put it, everybody's got the opportunity to use the technology that's available, but they don't necessarily have the means. Should that punish somebody else? Again, it's a part of being in that technology that allows them to do that. But you guys answer your questions on the AI version, but I want to again put on the record, and I've done this before, there are many affiliates and the tracks. The amount of handle that comes through CAW can't be ignored. You cannot just remove that significant amount of handle and then expect it to come from somewhere else. Pat and I have had this conversation 100 times, and I know Pat agrees, you know, from the standpoint of, you know, we can't necessarily replace that handle. We've got to be careful with how we address CAWs. But I am one that tends to agree, who's not an expert in the space. There is a technology issue more so than just somebody trying to manipulate food.
Well, I don't pretend to be an expert in this field either, but I, number one, do not think there's any anything nefarious going on. I don't think there's any cheating, so to speak, or use that word manipulate. That's a word that I can go either way. I think that the CAWs are taking advantage of situations that are left open. Our tow system, for one thing, I think could be improved. Recycling could be moved up, improved on, made faster. As we all heard the example when they buy stock and it says $24.36, and you hit the button, that's pretty much what you're getting. Today, when we got it works 5 to 1, and it takes a while to cycle through. And these CAWs at the end are able to get their debts in quicker, so their money goes in, in between cycles, and when it comes out the other end at 9 to 2, it's 3 to 1. And I don't think it's manipulation, it's just maybe a lack of improvement in our tow system. So no, I don't think they're manipulating, but they are taking advantage of something that they have, not illegally.
And I would say too that, the AI certainly democratizes things a bit, right? Like people start to have access to data and models and computing power that I think will start to rival, I think a sophisticated individual could probably compete with some of these teams on a handicap basis and applying the data that way. I think the other angle that I would be a big advocate for is more transparency in the system, right? To the extent that, we can share more data from the tow system, and get more in front of people, and really let people understand what's going on and try and get their own opportunities, right? And I think that's that's the beauty of this game, right? Everybody's ready to have their own angle and find their own angle and hopefully find some success. And so, to me, I think it's really a democratizing tool, but I think as an industry to focus on transparency and focus on ways we can at least level the playing field and help people who are retail players feel like they've got a better chance is important to the game.
The way I would kind of answer it is, I do think it's a technology problem. I think the computer teams were already there though. So they're coming at it with teams of 20 people with budgets in the millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. So I think they've already taken advantage of all those opportunities before AI. And as Kyle said, now AI is going to democratize and speed up, a lot of people to be able to play the game better. But I would say also, in reference to the tow system and the AEWs, if we compare the apps that we use, our kids, our grandkids are using, or as John said, just booking a table and canceling it and moving it around. Those are simple things. They kind of blow away AEWs and online betting. And if you talk about like the sophistication, AEWs let you do what you need to do, but they don't really help you win. And that's what these computer teams are spending tens of millions of dollars doing. So it's made our game tough, and there's a lot of different things that cascade. What we're trying to do is democratize the data, getting things in the hands of people, whether it be better odds, better picks, and tools to help them have a better shot.
Great. Well, thank you guys very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.